Welcome to this week's Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up, where we break down the most pressing intelligence and national security stories shaping the world. With over 25 years of experience in intelligence and law enforcement, Neil Bisson, director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network and a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, brings you expert insights into the key developments you need to know. This week, we examine China's growing use of transnational repression as a 19-year-old pro-democracy activist from Hong Kong finds herself on Beijing's wanted list, despite living in the UK. What does this mean for dissidents abroad, and how is the UK responding? Meanwhile, a new investigation reveals an Indian businessman accused of foreign interference in Canada with alleged ties to intelligence operations aimed at swaying political discourse. How deep does this go, and what are the broader implications for Canada-India relations? We're also covering Taiwan's detention of a Chinese cruise ship suspected of sabotaging an undersea internet cable, the NCS urgent advisory for iPhone users to enable Apple's lockdown mode to counter sophisticated spyware threats, as well as the mass firing of over 100 U.S. intelligence officers under controversial circumstances. Plus, North Korea has reportedly sent more troops to Russia, with some deployed to Ukraine's front lines. Is this a game changer for the war? And finally, Vladimir Putin warns Western elites against interfering in U.S.-Russia relations, while his regime continues cyber attacks, sabotage, and military aggression. What's really at play here? Stay tuned as Neil unpacks these urgent developments. Now, let's get started.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm Neil Bisson, your host and the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network. The world is seeing some major political shifts again this week that will be unprecedented and will have effects on global security and intelligence sharing. Well, like every week in the world of intelligence, there's a lot to cover. So let's get started. For our first story, we're looking at the case of Cheung, a 19-year-old pro-democracy activist from Hong Kong now living in the UK. Once just an A-level student, Chloe found herself on the Chinese government wanted list with a $100,000 bounty placed on her by Hong Kong police. This raised some serious questions about transnational repression when authoritarian states reach beyond their borders to silence critics. Chloe's activism began in 2019 in Hong Kong when she began to protest and where she witnessed police crackdowns firsthand. She and her family relocated to the UK in 2021 under Britain's special visa scheme for people from Hong Kong. However, even in exile, she has remained outspoken, working for a pro-democracy NGO and advocating for the rights of people from Hong Kong. In December 2024, Hong Kong police issued arrest warrants for Chloe and 4 others, accusing them of violating the national security law, Beijing's sweeping legislation that criminalizes dissent even abroad. Chloe now faces serious risks, as China has been known to use intimidation, surveillance, and even violence against dissidents overseas. This case isn't just one of activists, it's a clear example of China's broader strategy of transnational repression. We've seen similar cases where Hong Kong dissidents abroad have been harassed, attacked, or had their families in Hong Kong targeted as leverage. This Chinese government has been cracking down on Hong Kong dissidents since the 2019 protests. In 2020, Beijing imposed a national security law which severely restricted freedoms in Hong Kong. Since then, independent newspapers have been shut down, activists have been imprisoned, and many have been forced to exile. Chloe isn't alone. Her name joins a growing list of activists targeted by Chinese authorities. This follows previous arrest warrants for prominent figures like Nathan Law, Simon Cheung, and others who have fled to Hong Kong but continue their advocacy abroad. UK has responded with a strong retort, with Foreign Secretary David Lammy stating that the government will not tolerate foreign intimidation on British soil. However, as UK-China relations evolve, particularly in trade, there is a concern that political pressure to hold China accountable may weaken. Chloe herself has spoken out, saying she refuses to be silenced despite these risks. She's been actively lobbying in Westminster, recently meeting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Shadow Foreign Minister Petri Patel. Patel reinforced the need to push back against transnational repression, stating, "We must not give an inch to any transnational repression in the UK." However, there are real concerns that the UK may not be doing enough. In recent years, there have been reports of Chinese state-linked intimidation tactics against dissidents abroad. Last May, British police arrested 3 men accused of gathering intelligence on Hong Kong activists in the UK. One of them was later found dead under suspicious circumstances. This case highlights how authoritarian regimes are expanding their reach beyond their borders. The use of arrest warrants and bounties against activists like Cheung signals Beijing's willingness to intimidate and silence critics, even in democratic nations. Some key questions come to mind. How will countries like the UK respond? And although strong statements are one thing, will there be action to protect these dissidents from foreign interference? We move on to Canada for our next story, where we're delving into a pressing issue that strikes at the heart of national security and sovereignty: foreign interference. Our focus is on a global news investigation titled "Canada Accuses Indian Businessmen of Foreign Interference Disinformation." This report sheds light on the alleged activities of the Shrivastava Group and its attempts to influence Canadian politics and public opinion. The Global News article reveals that the Shrivastava Group, an Indian conglomerate, has been implicated in efforts to sway Canadian politicians and disseminate disinformation. According to documents from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, Ankit Shrivastava, the group's vice chair, was reportedly tasked by Indian intelligence agencies to identify and influence Canadian politicians. This involved providing financial assistance and propaganda materials to garner support for issues favorable to India. Furthermore, the Shrivastava Group has been accused of creating fake news websites, some masquerading as Canadian outlets, to propagate pro-Indian narratives and criticize Pakistan. Such actions represent a sophisticated strategy to manipulate public perception and interfere in Canada's democratic processes. Foreign interference is not a new phenomenon in Canada. Historically, nations like China and Russia have been prominent actors in such activities. However, recent reports indicate that India has become increasingly active in this realm. The assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, British Columbia in June 2023, allegedly linked to Indian operatives, has further strained Canada-India relations and underscored the severity of foreign interference threats. The creation of fake news websites by entities like the Shrivastava Group exemplifies modern disinformation tactics. By mimicking legitimate news sources, these platforms can effectively spread misleading information, making it challenging for the public to discern truth from falsehood. Justice Minister Jose Hogue, leading a public inquiry into foreign interference, emphasized the gravity of disinformation, labeling it as an existential threat to democracies. She highlighted the necessity for governments to act swiftly and transparently to counter such evolving threats. From my perspective, these revelations underscore the importance of robust counterintelligence measures and public awareness. Democracies must be vigilant against covert operations that aim to undermine the institutions and societal cohesion. The allegations against the Shrivastava Group highlight the multifaceted nature of foreign interference, encompassing both political influence and sophisticated disinformation campaigns. As these threats evolve, so too must our strategies to combat them. It's imperative for governments, institutions, and the public to collaborate in safeguarding our democratic values and processes. In the next story, we turn our attention to a critical infrastructure issue with profound national security implications: the vulnerability of undersea internet cables. Our discussion is anchored on a recent CNN report titled "Taiwan Detains Chinese Crude Ship Suspected of Cutting Undersea Cable." This incident highlights the fragility of the infrastructure that underpins our global communications and the strategic challenges it presents. According to the CNN report, Taiwanese authorities have detained a ship with a Chinese crew on suspicion of severing an undersea internet cable. This event has significant ramifications, as undersea cables are the backbone of global internet connectivity, carrying over 95% of international data. The deliberate or accidental disruption of these cables can lead to substantial communications outages, economic losses, and potential national security threats. In response to the vulnerabilities exposed by such incidents, Taiwan Space Agency has been proactive. As reported by CNN in May 2024, the agency is developing its own version of a satellite internet system akin to Starlink. This initiative aims to ensure that Taiwan remains connected even if its undersea cable infrastructure is compromised during a conflict. The move not only enhances Taiwan's resilience, but also serves as a deterrent against potential adversaries contemplating infrastructure sabotage. Undersea cables have long been recognized as critical yet vulnerable infrastructure. The importance is underscored by the fact that they facilitate global financial transactions, communications, and data transfers. The strategic significance of these cables has prompted nations and alliances to take proactive measures. For instance, in January 2025, NATO launched the Baltic Sentry mission to safeguard undersea cables in the Baltic Sea after incidences of damage. The mission reflects a growing awareness of the need to protect these vital assets from both state and non-state actors. The incident involving the Chinese crewed ship near Taiwan is not isolated. Similar events have raised concerns globally about the security of undersea cables. The potential for espionage, data theft, or crippling communication disruptions make the protection of these cables a priority for national security agencies worldwide. Experts have long warned about the vulnerabilities associated with undersea cables. American journalist and political commentator Fareed Zakaria stated in a November 2022 segment on CNN that actors like Russia could sabotage global communications by targeting these cables. He emphasized that the physical security of this infrastructure is as crucial as cybersecurity measures themselves. From my personal perspective, this is another example of the bold recklessness surrounding hybrid warfare that countries like Russia and China are taking against Western countries and their allies. The detention of the Chinese crewed ship by Taiwanese authorities underscores the necessity for stringent monitoring and protection of undersea cables. Nations must invest in both technological solutions, such as satellite internet systems, and physical security measures to safeguard these critical infrastructures. The recent incident near Taiwan serves as yet another reminder of the vulnerabilities inherent in our global communications infrastructure. As geopolitical tensions persist, the security of undersea cables becomes increasingly paramount. Nations must adopt a multifaceted approach, combining technological innovation with robust security measures to protect these vital assets. Our next story focuses on a critical cybersecurity advisory that affects millions of iPhone users worldwide. The National Security Agency, or NSA, has recently recommended enabling Apple's lockdown mode to counter sophisticated spyware threats. This discussion is based on insights from a Forbes article entitled "Spy Agency Tells iPhone Users Turn on Apple Security Feature." The Forbes article highlights the NSA's advisory urging iPhone users to activate Apple's lockdown mode. This feature, introduced to combat advanced spyware attacks, significantly restricts device functionality to minimize potential vulnerabilities. By limiting certain features, lockdown mode reduces the attack surface available to malicious actors, thereby enhancing the device's security posture. The NSA's recommendation stems from increasing concerns over sophisticated spyware capable of infiltrating devices without user interaction, known as zero-click attacks. Such malware can access sensitive data, monitor communications, and compromise personal and professional information. Enabling lockdown mode serves as a proactive measure to protect against these advanced threats. Zero-click attacks have become a prominent concern in the cybersecurity landscape. Unlike traditional malware that requires user interaction, these attacks exploit vulnerabilities to gain control over devices silently. Notable incidences, such as Operation Triangulation, have demonstrated the potential for widespread compromise of devices through such methods. In response to these threats, Apple introduced lockdown mode as part of its ongoing efforts to enhance user security. This feature is designed for individuals at heightened risk of targeted attacks, including journalists, activists, and government officials. By enabling lockdown mode, users can add an extra layer of defense against sophisticated cyber espionage tools. Cybersecurity experts emphasize the importance of proactive measures in safeguarding personal devices. The NSA's advisory aligns with best practices for individuals who may be targeted by advanced, persistent threats. While lockdown mode imposes certain limitations on device functionality, the trade-off is a substantial increase in security. From the perspective of a retired intelligence professional, enabling lockdown mode is a prudent step to those who have to deal with sensitive information or believe they may be targets of sophisticated cyber attacks. It's essential to balance usability with security, and in high-risk scenarios, prioritizing protection is paramount. The NSA's recommendation to activate Apple's lockdown mode underscores the evolving nature of cybersecurity threats and the necessity for robust security measures. As attackers develop more advanced techniques, most users must adopt proactive strategies to protect their data and privacy. Enabling lockdown mode is a significant step in mitigating the risks associated with zero-click spyware attacks. Our next story delves into significant development within the U.S. intelligence community. Recent reports indicate that Director of U.S. National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has terminated over 100 intelligence officers. The official reason provided centers on allegations that these individuals participated in inappropriate discussions on a secure government messaging platform. This action has sparked discussions about the underlying motivations and broader implications of such a substantial dismissal. The administration cites misconduct related to obscene and sexually explicit discussions on Interlink, a secure platform designed for operational communications. Engaging in such discussions on a professional platform raises legitimate concerns about professionalism and the appropriate use of government resources. However, this event occurs within a broader context of the current administration's efforts to reshape federal agencies. It also does not account for any considerations of the rights of the workers. There has been a notable pattern of dismissals in the United States across various sectors, including intelligence, law enforcement, and the military. Many of these actions have been justified on the ground of eliminating inefficiencies, addressing perceived corruption, and dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Federal agencies have been directed to submit plans for significant staff reductions, with the goal of removing underperforming employees and reducing non-essential roles. Additionally, the administration has faced scrutiny due to legal challenges involving President Trump. Notably, there have been indictments related to alleged mishandling of classified documents at a Mar-a-Lago estate and charges concerning hush money payments to adult film star actress Stormy Daniels. These legal challenges have shaped many of the administration's decisions regarding personnel and agency restructuring. The dismissal of over 100 intelligence officers is unprecedented in this scale. While the official justification pertains to misconduct, it is essential to consider the broader pattern of personnel changes within federal agencies. The administration has actively worked to dismantle DEI programs, advocating for a shift towards merit-based systems. This approach has led to significant restructuring and the removal of individuals associated with previous initiatives. Moreover, the legal challenges facing President Trump have intensified the administration's focus on loyalty and alignment within federal agencies. The intersection of these issues with the recent dismissals raised questions about potential motivations beyond the stated reasons. Critics argue that the mass firings may serve dual purposes, addressing misconduct and facilitating the replacement of personnel with individuals more aligned with the administration's current policies and perspectives. This perspective suggests a strategic effort to reshape the intelligence community in a manner which is consistent with the administration's objectives. Conversely, supporters contend that maintaining professionalism and appropriate conduct within secure platforms is paramount. From this viewpoint, the dismissals are a necessary measure to uphold the integrity and operational security of intelligence activities. The termination of over 100 intelligence officers under the pretext of misconduct presents a complex scenario. While the official reasons highlighting concerns about professionalism, the broader context of administrative restructuring and ongoing legal challenges suggest additional layers of motivation. This development prompts critical questions about the balance between ensuring professional conduct and potential political influences within the intelligence community. As this situation continues to evolve, it remains imperative to monitor how these actions impact the effectiveness and impartiality of intelligence operations. We head to South Korea for our next story, where we're examining reports from their intelligence agency that North Korea has deployed more troops to Russia, with some being repositioned on the front lines in Ukraine's western Kursk region. The exact number remains uncertain, but estimates suggest that at least 1,000 troops have been added. This deepens the military collaboration between Moscow and Pyongyang, raising concerns over the battlefield dynamics and the broader geopolitical consequences. According to South Korean intelligence, North Korean troops have been engaged in combat operations alongside Russian forces for at least 4 months. These troops reportedly suffered heavy losses, with estimates suggesting that at least 1,000 North Korean soldiers have been killed. Despite early reports of their absence from the battlefield, they were recently redeployed to the front lines in February. This raises some important questions. How effective are these North Korean troops in modern warfare? What does their presence signal about Russia's military needs and strategy? And how does this impact the ongoing war in Ukraine? From an intelligence perspective, North Korea's involvement provides insight into its growing military alliance with Russia. Both nations have historically been isolated from the West, and their partnership appears to be deepening, not just through military collaboration, but also through security agreements. North Korea's participation in the war follows a series of high-level engagements between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. In October, reports surfaced of North Korean troops arriving in Russia, coinciding with the signing of a security and defense treaty between the two nations. However, there have been some serious doubts about their effectiveness. Early intelligence assessments suggest that these troops are ill-prepared for modern battlefield conditions, particularly against Ukrainian drone warfare. Still, they should not be underestimated. North Korean forces are known for their discipline, endurance, and ability to operate under harsh conditions. Russia's strategic use of foreign troops, including those from the Wagner Group in North Korea, suggests its struggle to maintain manpower while sustaining heavy casualties. Defectors and military analysts caution against dismissing the capabilities of North Korean soldiers. While they may lack experience with advanced Western weaponry, they are battle-hardened and accustomed to extreme conditions. Additionally, their deployment signals an increased reliance on unconventional alliances by Moscow, which could further complicate the war. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has acknowledged the return of North Korean troops to the front line, reinforcing concerns about escalating foreign involvement in the war. North Korea's growing military engagement in Ukraine is another example of how global alliances are shifting. This isn't just a war between Russia and Ukraine, it's increasingly drawing in other nations, whether through direct military assistance or strategic partnerships. Looking ahead, we have some key questions. Will North Korea continue sending more troops, and at what cost? How will Ukraine and its allies counter this development? Could this set precedent for other nations to get further involved? I'll be keeping a close eye on these developments. For our last story this week, we're heading to the Kremlin, where we're critically examining recent statements made by President Vladimir Putin. Russia's president has cautioned Western elites against undermining a potential rapprochement between Russia and the United States. Given Russia's track record for suppressing dissent, engaging in sabotage operations, and conducting cyber attacks against Western nations, it's imperative to scrutinize the implications of Putin's remarks. President Putin's assertions come against a backdrop of Russia's own aggressive actions. Domestically, his administration has systematically stifled dissent through severe human rights abuses. Internationally, Russia has been implicated in sabotage operations, particularly in the Baltic Sea, targeting infrastructure of neighboring countries that oppose its nationalistic and oppressive policies. Moreover, Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine has destabilized the region, leading to significant geopolitical tensions. Concurrently, the United States has signaled to Ukraine that NATO membership is not forthcoming, while expressing interest in the Ukraine's critical mineral resources. This juxtaposition raises questions about the broader strategic objectives at play. Additionally, Russia's extensive history of cyber attacks against Western countries further undermines its credibility. These actions have targeted critical infrastructure, electoral processes, and private enterprises, posing significant threats to national security and democratic institutions. Historically, Russia has employed a dual strategy of internal repression with external aggression to consolidate power. The resurgence of Soviet-era tactics, such as punitive measures to silence political dissidents, exemplifies the lengths to which the Kremlin will go to maintain control. In the Baltic region, a series of undersea cable disruptions have been reported, with investigations suggesting potential Russian involvement through their shadow fleet. These incidences have prompted NATO to enhance surveillance and security measures to protect vital infrastructure. The invasion of Ukraine shows Russia's willingness to violate international law to achieve its geopolitical aims. This aggression has not only led to widespread human suffering, but has also strained Russia's relations with the global community. While President Putin portrays himself as a defender against Western interference, his actions tell a different story. The suppression of dissent within Russia, characterized by the detention of political activists and the enactment of repressive laws, highlights a regime intolerant of opposition. International security analysts have raised alarms over Russia's sabotage activities in the Baltic Sea, viewing them as a deliberate attempt to destabilize the region and intimidate neighboring countries. These actions are consistent with a broader strategy of hybrid warfare designed to exploit vulnerabilities and sow discord among Western allies. Cybersecurity experts have documented numerous instances of Russian-sponsored cyber attacks, emphasizing the sophisticated nature of these operations and the potential disruption of critical systems. Such activities reflect a broader strategy to undermine the security and stability of Western nations. President Putin's warnings about Western elites sabotaging U.S.-Russia relations appears disingenuous when contrasted with Russia's own actions. Kremlin's suppression of internal dissent, engagement in sabotage operations, unprovoked military aggression, and persistent cyber attacks collectively pose a significant threat to Western freedom and global stability. This, taken in consideration with veiled threats that Putin would use the FSB to strike back against any Western elites who sabotage the rapprochement, is a clear indication that this totalitarian approach to diplomacy has not changed. As we navigate these complex geopolitical dynamics, it's crucial to remain vigilant and critically assess the narratives presented by authoritarian regimes. Understanding the broader context of these actions enables us to better protect our democratic institutions and uphold the values of freedom and human rights. Well, that's it for this week. As always, the links to the open source stories are in the transcript. If you appreciate getting the world of intelligence in 30 minutes or less, think about becoming a supporter of the show through either Buzzsprout or Patreon. Thanks for listening, and be sure to share, like, and leave a comment. Until next week, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
That's a wrap on another episode of Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap Up. From China's transnational repression and more alleged foreign interference in Canada to Taiwan's undersea cable concerns, North Korean troops in Ukraine, and Putin's latest warnings, today's stories reveal the complex and ever-shifting landscape of global intelligence. Delivering these in-depth analyses takes time, expertise, and a commitment to uncovering the intelligence stories that matter most. Each episode is built on extensive research, careful analysis, and decades of experience in intelligence and law enforcement. If you found today's insights valuable, consider liking, sharing, or leaving a comment. It helps expand the conversation and grow the podcast's reach. And if you would like to support the show and help keep these intelligence briefings coming, you can do so through Patreon or Buzzsprout. Whether it's a one-time contribution or ongoing support, every bit helps us continue delivering expert analysis on the security issues shaping our world. You'll find the links in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And as Neil always says, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe. See you next week.